Good evening, folks. Going to be going over Protection Warrior today, which is my main offset these days. It is nice that we can use all three of our specs, but since I detest arms, I usually focus on Protection and Fury. So, in this video, we're going to be going over talents, stat weights, of course, your artifact weapon, and rotation. Rotation is very, very simple. Really only a couple things you need to worry about, but there is a little bit of stuff I'm going to go over. So let's, of course, start with talents. Many of these talents are incredibly viable for this expansion. Starting with level 15s, of course, Shockwave and Stormbolt. Same thing as the other specs. I usually choose Shockwave for the ads. In Heroic Dungeons, Mythic Plus Dungeons, and even in Raids, it's nice to be able to stun ads in front of you and be able to mitigate some of the damage on yourself, so if you're at low health, the healers can keep up a little bit. Stormbolt, not worth it in my opinion. Shockwave does the same thing, only better, and stuns more people. And of course, if you hit at least 3 targets, the cooldown is reduced in half, which is fantastic. Warbringer is another really good addition. If you're charging around a lot, we do get 2 actual charges of charge, and this actually does more damage than Shockwave. However, it's really situational if you have ads grouped up a lot of the time. Most of the time when you're in Mythic Dungeons, Heroic Dungeons, and even in some raids, the ads are going to be spread out. You're going to have to gather them up. And charging isn't only going to stun all of them at the same time, where Shockwave is more effective, and you can choose to do it. I guess you can technically choose to charge when you want to, but I more rely on charge for movement instead of stunning, where Shockwave does that job for me. This, of course, is actually geared towards a rating spec. I do change around a couple of talents for Mythic Plus and Dungeons. One of the reasons, Impending Victory, it replaces Victory Rush, and you can use it on demand instead of having to get a killing blow on a target to activate it, healing you for 15% of your maximum health, which is really nice, especially in Mythic Pluses, where you're taking a lot more damage if you're getting into those higher levels, where mobs are hitting harder. Having on-demand heal if your healer is having a rough time is always really nice to support your healer and keep yourself alive, but it does also reset after you kill something, which is very nice. It's just nice to have that on-demand heal, and I usually stick with this for Heroics and Mythic Plus Dungeons. If you're in a raid setting, you of course want to go with Inspiring Presence, which is fantastic. Essentially, your raid members within 60 yards of you heal themselves for 3% of the damage they deal, and that's all damage, which is fantastic. Having a raid of 10 plus, I mean, you're going to be over time allowing your healers to get a little bit of a break, and allowing your damage dealers, your DPS, to heal themselves, which does help out a lot. It's not going to seem like tons, but over the course of a 5-minute, 10-minute fight, it's going to contribute a lot. Definitely a very versatile talent here, making Protection Warriors one of the best tanks in the game. Safeguard is okay, but actually when you go through your artifact talent tree, it gives you something much similar to Safeguard, so really not a talent worthwhile. It is nice that you can intercept. They actually removed Intervene and made our Intercept, which they just renamed Charge, to Intercept. You can use this on both a friend and a foe, so really nice to be a little more versatile. Level 45 talents, Renewed Fury, Ignore Pain also enrages you, increasing the damage you deal. It's okay. Ultimatum, of course, your shield slam crits cause your next focused rage to cost no rage. What focused rage is it's the same thing as arms warriors have, but instead of making your mortal strike hit harder, it stacks up to 3 times to make your shield slam hit harder, which does add a lot of DPS. I've seen 500, 600, 700,000 crits at gear levels. I'm at 851 in my Prot set. Nice to have that extra damage for sure, and make tanks a lot more viable when it comes to damage. Avatar, same thing as every other spec, so we're not going to cover that, just increases your damage. Does remove all roots and snares, which I guess if you're in the scenarios fight and for some reason you get rooted, it is nice to be able to pop that and get out of those roots, but Ultimatum is a lot better. It is a passive and more viable in my opinion. Level 60 talents, Warlord's Challenge. While Berserker Rage is active, you may use Taunt with no cooldown, and those enemies that you taunt move to you 50% faster. Kind of a lackluster talent. Bounding Stride, same thing as the other classes, other specs, excuse me. Reduces the cooldown of your Heroic Leap by 15 seconds, and you move a little faster for 3 seconds after. I generally stick with Crackling Thunder, giving my radius of Thunderclap to be 100% larger, allowing you to gather those ads a lot better if they're spread out a little bit more. Since they took away our was it challenging shout or our challenging rallying banner that taunts all enemies to us. This gives us the ability to gather up adds that might be spread out that you can't taunt all at once. Level 75 talents, Revenge, of course, always best served cold. Revenge generates 2 additional rage for each target that it hits. Pretty useful in Heroic Dungeons or Mythic Plus, where you're going to be gathering a lot of adds at the same time, generating that additional rage, and going over our rotation. We'll go over why that's important. Never Surrender, Ignore Pain will ignore up to 75% more damage based on your missing health. Really, really useful. And of course, Indomitable increases your maximum health by 25% and maximum effect of Ignore Pain by 25%. Really quick, what Ignore Pain is, they really just renamed Shield Barrier Ignore Pain. Functionality-wise, it does the same exact thing as Shield Barrier did the last expansion. Essentially, you use either 20 to 60 rage, depending on how much you have, and it creates a shield on yourself, absorbing any kind of damage. And that can be physical damage, that can be magic damage. It's damage from any source based on the rage spent. Generally, when you use 40, 50 rage, at gear levels nowadays, and with health pools in the millions these days, I've seen it block up to 1.5 million damage, which is half of your health bar, which is fantastic if you're expecting a really large hit or are really short on cooldowns and need that extra buffer before the healer can't keep up or before you die. So these two are really, really good. This one being a little more viable, I suppose, for Mythic Plus content, where you're going to be taking a lot of consistent damage. On the flip side, this one also is very nice. I choose with this one. The reason being is I tie it together with Impending Victory up here, healing yourself for 15% of your health. When you have 25% more health, that Impending Victory is more effective. But both are really, really solid talents. Obviously, just choose your playstyle. I prefer this one personally. Level 90 talents, Vengeance, Ignore Pain, reduces the rage cost of your next focused rage by 35%, and vice versa. When you use focused rage, reduces the rage cost of your next Ignore Pain by 35%. So you still get a really effective Ignore Pain. It's just going to cost 35% less rage, but still give you the full effect of the rage that you were going to use. Really nice to bounce between focused rage and Ignore Pain. Really, really solid talent. Into the Fray, giving you 3% haste per enemy with up to 10 yards, up to 5 enemies. Additionally, you can have 15% additional rage if you have 5 enemies towards you. It's okay, but haste isn't our main stat here. I would avoid this one. Booming Voice, it's okay. However, Demoralizing Shout is on a 1.5 minute cooldown. It is nice if you want to tie in being able to use either Shield Block or Ignore Pain when you use Demoralizing Shout to make it more effective. These kind of tie in together for one big cooldown. I personally prefer this one over the period of long fights, especially in a raid scenario. This one's going to pull ahead, both in damage mitigated sustainably, and this one's more burst. It's just really nice to give me that sustainable damage and that extra sustained DPS from Focus Rage. Level 100 talents, Anger Management, same thing as I think Arms is, or the last expansion. Every 10 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on your main cooldowns, Battle Cry, Last Stand, Shield Wall, etc., etc. It's okay. I really wish as Protection Warriors they would allow us to generate more rage than we are, but then again they have to balance us out somehow, since we are actually mitigating a lot of damage by the Ignore Pains and Shield Blocks we're using. Heavy Percussions, Shield Slam extends the duration of Shield Block by 1.5 seconds, and Shield Block increases the damage of Shield Slam by additional 30%. This has really, really good synergy with your Focused Rage and Vengeance as well, since you want to be rotating between Shield Slam and Focused Rage if you get a couple procs going. Really nice as a passive, works really well in longer fights. Ravager, fantastic. It is the same thing. You throw your weapon on the ground, does a little bit of damage. The main thing here is it increases your parry chance by 30% for 12 seconds. Really, really good to add a little bit of damage on Heroics and Mythic Plus, as well as generate a little bit of parry for yourself. And if you know a Protection Warrior a little bit, you'll know that your Revenge resets whenever you parry an attack from an enemy. So having that 30% additional parry and being able to cleave like crazy with Revenge will not only increase your survivability when you pull maybe too many mobs, or if you just want to add a little bit of DPS when you're, on Black Rock Cold and you pull all those bats. That's always a nice time to have some more damage to eliminate those adds and keep yourself alive a little longer. Going over stat weights, Really easy. I have a nice add-on called Pawn. If you go over here, it actually shows stat weights. Stat weights for Protection Warriors pretty similar for the last expansion. Of course, Mastery is always nice to give us that additional chance to block and your additional chance to critically block, essentially blocking double the amount of damage that a regular block would do. Also increasing your attack power, which is very nice. So always a really solid stat. Crit is always nice. Haste is always nice to give us those extra attacks, those faster attacks, and lower the cooldown of some of our moves. Versatility is actually the best stat nowadays, tied in tandem with Mastery, increasing the damage you do and reducing the damage you take. So Mastery and Versatility are the main stats you want to be going for. A little Leech is nice, doesn't really do much. Avoidance is okay, reducing damage you take from area attacks. Dodge, parry, block, they're all kind of moot since they took away those defensive stats from pieces of gear. Now they're just kind of acquired. I guess your block is increased by the more mastery you have. Parry and dodge, though, I think those are just increased by strength. So you're really not gearing for those specific traits or specific stats as a primary stat. But your block is always increased by your mastery nowadays. So really, this spec, as far as rotation goes, really, really simple. As far as cleave, you have a couple things you can do. Of course, you want to be using Thunderclap, which does put a bleed on everybody it hits. Shockwave, of course, that AoE cone stun in front of you. Your artifact is okay. Essentially, you breathe fire. And you can also use defensive moves while you're channeling this. So you're dealing okay amount of damage over 3 seconds to everybody in front of you in a cone. And you can still use your Demoralizing Shout, Shield Block, any defensive ability you have while you're channeling it without canceling the channel, which is really nice. Doesn't deal tons of damage, but it's okay. We'll go over the artifact tree in a second. But main thing, of course, use Shield Slam on cooldown. That is your main rage generator, and can hit very, very hard when you get those focused rage stacks. 50% per stack, you can be hitting really hard with your Shield Slam. Devastate, your filler, of course, has been around since, as far as I can remember, at least Burning Crusade, if not Vanilla. I'm pretty sure we had Sunder Armor back then. I've been playing a long time. My memory isn't as good as it used to be. Revenge does the same thing as Devastate, only it cleaves everybody in front and does generate 5 rage, and has the possibility of generating additional rage per enemy hit if you choose to go with this talent, which is pretty good for generating additional rage, giving you more shield blocks to ignore pains. The more damage you are, or the more mobs you have in front of you. Focused Rage, same thing as Arms, increasing the damage of Shield Slam instead of Mortal Strike. You have Victory Rush. Like I was saying, this is more of a raiding talent tree in my opinion. Let's hop down here in the inn. I'm going to show you actually a couple talents I switch around for more dungeon-oriented content, whether it's Mythic Plus. I usually switch Inspiring Presence to Impending Victory to give me that on-demand heal. Shockwave I keep, Ultimatum I keep. Crackling Thunder becomes even more viable with pulling multiple adds. If I know I don't have a very strong healer, I will pick Never Surrender instead of this. I do sacrifice a little bit of health, but since I know I'm probably going to be taking more damage, this becomes a lot more viable than this does, because the more health you're missing, the more effective Ignore Pain is. Into the Fray, I don't bother. Booming Voice, it's nice for tying these 3 things together, giving you that additional rage when you use Demoralizing Shout. But this one, in my opinion, you're going to be wanting to add more DPS to burn through those ads faster. And I'll choose Ravager if I know a specific dungeon has a lot of ads. And again, if I don't have a very strong healer for that, it gives me that increased survivability with that extra 30% parry chance, allowing me to pump out a lot more revenges, cleaving everyone in front of me. So this is what my dungeoning or Mythic Plus spec would look like. Again, if you're going back towards raiding, this one longevity-wise is fantastic. Inspiring Presence, you want to be adding on those heals passively to your raid members as they deal damage. And that's really about it as far as changes. Your main things you're looking for here as far as defensive cooldowns, you still do have Battle Cry for your offensive cooldown. You're going to be critting 100% of the time for 5 seconds. It's nice to bounce between Focused Rage and Shield Slams to get that extra damage and that extra rage. Main ones here, Ignore Pain, Glorified, and Renamed Shield Barrier. Shield Block, the same thing as it does. You're going to be blocking every attack for 6 seconds. Demoralizing Shout, every person that this affects, they deal 20% less damage to you. And if you do spec into it, you actually do a little more damage when you pop that as well. This is my trinket. Fantastic, giving you that versatility, increasing your primary stat. Shield Wall, the same as it's been since the dawn of time. Last Stand, of course, increasing your health. Berserker Rage, really wish it helped you generate additional rage, but it doesn't. But it does get you out of those fears and incapacitates, which is pretty nice. Going over the artifact weapon, really easy to get the first 2 golden dragons, actually. I hug the right side the entire time here. Going Shadow of the Bones, giving me that extra crit chance for Shield Slam during Shield Block. Getting that extra rage for Intolerance, even though I find myself rage capping very infrequently. Dragon Skin, giving me that extra bonus from Ignore Pain by 8% once you max it out. This one is really, really nice. Instead of Spell Reflect only reflecting one spell, it reflects an unlimited number of spells during its duration, which I believe is 5 seconds. So really nice if you have multiple caster mobs, or if you decide to go Prot Warrior in PvP. First Golden Dragon, blocking an additional attack, has a chance to increase the total damage ignored by your next Ignore Pain by 40%. You'll see a bunch of shields go around you, hear a nice metal shield sound, making your Ignore Pain, the next one, 40% more effective, which is fantastic when you're using Shield Block and blocking those extra attacks. After you get your first Gold Dragon there, go all the way up here to Wall of Steel. When you target an ally with Intercept, it redirects 2 additional attacks, and the damage you take from those attacks is reduced by 10%. That is your charge. It used to be Intervene. They actually kind of blended Intervene and Charge into one, making Intercept. You can use this on enemies and friends if you need to absorb a couple attacks if they're getting hit. Leaping Giants reduces the cooldown of your heroic leap by 6 seconds, just gives you a little bit more mobility. This one is incredibly nice. Critical blocks from your mastery, increase your armor by 30%, and deal a nice explosion of damage to all enemies in front of you. At gear levels right now, it's 74,000 damage, adding some nice cleave damage when you do critically block, which is increased by the more mastery you have. The last Golden Dragon up here, Shield Slam and Revenge, generate 50% increased rage during Demoralizing Shout. It's kind of nice for those times where you need a little bit additional rage. It does work very nice in tandem if you do use this Booming Voice, where your Demoralizing Shout generates 50 rage. You're going to be getting a little extra from those attacks. But going to the artifact weapon tree, these two are much stronger as far as survivability goes than this one. Other ones over here, increased duration and radius of Demoralizing Shout, okay. This one is actually going to be very nice. I'm aiming for this one. Increases your stamina by 1%, eventually 4%, maybe even a little more if you get these relics up here, giving you additional charge of that. This one is also very nice, increasing your armor by 2%, giving you that more passive survivability. This one's good for DPS, increasing damage dealt by Revenge by 6%, but you're shooting for survivability here. So you want to be getting these 2 gold dragons first, then you can finish this spot. Lastly, Last Stand increases health by additional 10%, stacking up to 3 times. Having that extra health is going to be very nice. But like I said, I chose these 2 first golden dragons because in survivability, this one helps a lot. And this one's even better, increasing your armor by 30% instead of just, 8% once you max that out. So that's really all it is, guys. Stat weights, again, should be shooting for crit is okay. You want to be shooting for mastery and versatility. I'll post a Protection Warrior gameplay. I think I'm just going to run through a heroic here. Let's see what I get. Really about it, guys. Really viable spec as far as rating goes. This thing right here, having your allies heal for 3% of their damage, is insanely nice that you bring that to the raid, giving the healers a little bit of a break. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be tons at the very first part, but over time you're going to be adding a lot of passive healing and a lot of substantial healing over time. As gear levels progress, they're going to be doing more damage, translating into more healing for you. So really nice. Again, I really wish by taking damage you would generate a little bit more rage if you're playing a Prot Warrior. People are going to want you all the time. Not as self-healing as, say, like a Blood Decay or maybe a Prot Pally or even a Demon Hunter these days. But survivability, this is a great spec. You have a lot of great offensive and defensive cooldowns. You bring stuns to the game, you bring mobility to the game, and again, those passive heals. All around a great spec. If you have any comments, please do let me know. As always, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Please do follow me on my Twitch channel, Mr. Graham1337, if you go to twitch.tv. I'll be adding a couple more videos here. As far as I might tap into ARMS, not too sure. I'm not a big fan of it at all. I know a lot of people like it. I have seen a lot of people be successful in it. I, however, cannot get into the groove. I prefer Fury hand over fist. So feel free to leave some comments. As always, cheers.